And I am a person who had dense breasts, and so is our next guest here tonight. Mrs. Kim Lusk is joining us this evening. How are you doing, Kim?
Hey, April, how's it going? I'm doing great.
Good, man. Thank you so much for joining tonight. I really appreciate it. I know um, you rescheduled with me because we were supposed to do this 3 weeks ago. Our power went out. Yours went out first. And I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to have her. And then mine went out. I was like, okay, I got her now. Get her for the next one. So I'm so glad you could join tonight, man. It's very cool. And for those of you who don't know, this is the goddess of thunder, very well known in the Dallas Fort Worth music scene. She plays bass for Battle Axe, Holy Diver, and the Red Rockers. That's a Dio tribute and a Sammy Hagar tribute. You guys also do some Van Halen, right?
That's right, Van Hagar.
Yep. That's excellent. So excellent. And you and I have known each other for, I think, about 10 years because you've been involved with breast cancer consignment for a long time, right?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been that long, but yeah.
We were talking the other night, and I was like, I think one of our first ever fundraisers, you did some blinged out pink Converse for our auction and helped us raise some funds. It's super cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I
Well,
enjoyed that.
we won't go into the whole pin the bra on the hottie thing. That's for another time. Let's just say that you've done a lot for the cause over the years, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
What was it? Memories.
Memories. That's awesome. Memories. Memories. Oh my
Yeah.
God, since we could potentially form a band, that's going to be our first single, Memories. Will be our first
There you
single.
go.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. So we're here tonight, and this is actually possibly the first time you've been on screen public to talk about your recent diagnosis of triple negative breast cancer. I know that you just announced this through Facebook a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so just to take everybody back, I remember several years ago, you were very regular about getting your mammograms, and you contacted me at one point, and you were concerned about the results of one of your mammograms, and it turned out that things were fine. So, but you've been on top of this for a long time. When did you start having mammograms?
So I started having mammograms and I believe when I turned 40. I have a history of breast cancer in my family. So I knew that it was important, to definitely get those done on an annual basis, along with the self breast exams. And so, been on top of it. And yeah, you're right. I remember having that mammogram that came back. I have fibroadenoma, which means that I have dense fibrocystic breasts, dense fibers in my breasts. And so something showed up on the mammogram and they weren't sure what it was. It ended up being, benign cyst, nothing really to be concerned about. And but it was very scary, with them saying, we found an abnormality. And that was, the first time that it happened to me. So I remember reaching out to you. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
they're telling me I need a biopsy. I mean, literally freaking out. I could hear my heart beating in my chest the whole weekend, waiting for that appointment, and just, it's a scary thing. And so I really appreciated you telling me, because I remember you said, hey, don't worry about anything unless there's something to worry about. You don't know what's going on, but you definitely need to get it checked, get it done. Hey, go do it. And I remembered that, so that was really helpful. I appreciate you doing that for me. But yeah, it ended up being a benign cyst, and they put a marker on it, stainless steel marker. And I've just stayed on top of it every year since then.
How long ago was that? That was like 2 years ago, right? Maybe three?
Oh no. Yeah, time flies, right?
Oh God, you're gonna
Uh,
tell because this is what happened, Kim. It was COVID. COVID happened between that, and COVID took like sucked up 3 years of our lives or something like that. So how long
no.
ago was it?
I believe that was 2015,
God, are
2016.
you serious?
Yeah.
I'm old. God. Yeah, I remember that really well, and I mean, I still feel firm about that. It's hard in the moment to remember or to think, hey, just keep focused, go to the doctor, do everything you need to do, check it out, be diligent, but don't just assume the worst. Just get it checked out and wait to see what that result shows. So a long time ago that you realized you had fibrocystic breasts, and so that also is a higher risk for breast cancer. And like you said, you had breast cancer in your family. How many different folks in your family had breast cancer? Was it on your mom's side or your dad's side?
So my grandmother, um, who I know you remember, because I know we've had some events where I've like mentioned her name, you've written it on the drum. But my grandmother, in her mid 60s, and this was back in the mid 80s, you know, when technology is not what it is today. Um, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and they caught it early, and she lived to be 100. Um,
I
so
mean,
initially,
it's crazy.
yeah, yeah. So, you know, I was thinking, you know, wow, you know, it's my inspiration. But since that time, um, there are relatives on my dad's side of my family who also had breast cancer. Two of them have since passed. One was in
Wow.
her early 30s, the other was in her 60s.
So on both sides, so the risk of breast cancer for
Mhm.
you having it on both sides super high.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so scary. Have you guys ever been? Has anyone in your family ever been tested? Done any of the genetic testing?
So I have done the genetic testing, and what's interesting about that is that everything came up negative.
Right. And you know, this is a point that I talk about a lot too, Kim, because I have a lot of cancer and breast cancer on my dad's side. There's not really much on my mom's side. She had a grandmother who had colon cancer, but that was really it on my mom's side. On my dad's side, there's a lot of cancer. So, like you know that you're at higher risk, but when you don't find that gene, it's like, what's happening? And I feel strongly that there are just, you know, a lot of genes out there that they haven't identified just yet. You know, when I first was diagnosed, there were like 3 that they were checking for. And then a few years later, I went back and they tested me for 15. And then a few years later, they went back and tested me for like 28. And so
Hmm.
that's growing all the time. And so I try to make sure and check with my doctor periodically and say, hey, do I need to come in for, you know, testing, genetic testing, and get tested for some of the new things. So we should both stay on top of that just because, you know, we can be a part of the solution, I think, or you know, help in the future if they're able to identify another gene that's going to be helpful, you know.
Absolutely. I had been tested before, just like you, back when they found the cyst, the benign cyst. They tested me then, it came back negative. I tested again this time and in February, and they said, yeah, everything came back negative. So it's what's interesting about it is the first time I was tested, it was like, okay, it's a benign cyst, and the genetic testing came back negative. So it was like a sigh of relief. Oh, okay, great. You know, I don't need to worry about it. Fast forward several years to now, and it's like, okay, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer, but the genetic testing said this. Okay, so I've been tested, like you said, for more genes. And, you know, we'll, like you said, we'll be part of the solution, but, you know, that's only part of the story, right? So it is still good to get that testing done. But it's interesting that, oh, okay, despite the fact that the genetics came back
Yeah,
negative,
yeah,
I still
yeah.
have breast cancer.
Right, right. So we know there's got to be a gene in there somewhere. They just haven't found it yet, and we'll be around to make sure that we figure out what that is when they come up with the new ones to test for. You know, I'm sure at some
Absolutely.
point they'll be able to pinpoint that for sure. But
Mhm.
regardless of your genetic testing previously, you were still very diligent about having your mammograms, and you were going annually. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, annual mammograms. And so, when was your last one before this most recent one where you were found to have breast cancer?
Last year. So
So
I made it a habit, and this is just one of those things, to have them done each January. So it's like the beginning of the new, you know, the new year, and I try to get, you know, all of my checkups and things done in January. So like the rest of the year, you know, I'm done. I've got them all done in January. I'm good to go. I've had my physical, you know, whatnot, and I've had my mammogram and so forth. So previous mammogram showed nothing.
nothing at all, and then you come in this year and you go in for your annual mammogram, and tell us what happened.
What's interesting, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So I was thinking about putting off the appointment, and I went for a physical it was late last year with my primary care physician. And my primary care physician basically said, hey, don't forget, you need to schedule your mammogram, you need to have your, a physical done, all these things. So we did the workup, did the physical, and it's like, hey, you need to stay on top of things. So I said, oh yeah, I usually get those done in January. So yeah, go ahead and, do the referral or what have you, and, have them call me and let's get it set up. So they did. And I was thinking, they never find anything, I'll have it done, but maybe I'll get it done later in the year. It's just one of those things, And something told me, no, you always get them done in January. Why change it now? You need to go and have it done now. Go do it. Like something inside me just said, you need to just go do it and get it done. Okay. So went in January to have that done. And they said, well, this is interesting. And I'm like,
never want to hear that. Yeah. You just don't want to hear that. That's the exact same thing they said to me, Kim. It's like, come on, guys, let's work on that bedside manner just a little. Yeah, dude.
They're really good about it. It just said, so, we need to take a closer look at this. And I said, well, I do have a cyst in my left breast, and this was in the right breast. They, talked to me about it and said, this, like you said, it's not what you want to hear, but I'm thinking, oh, okay, it's probably just another cyst. And I asked them, they had the film or the image of the cyst from the left breast, which is the one that had the benign cyst. So they had an image of that. I said, can you bring that up so that we can compare what these two abnormalities look like?
Yeah, if they look similar, or if they look different. Right.
Right. Yeah. And so when they brought it up, they actually showed, this is what the cyst looks like, and this is what this abnormality looks like. And it looks like a tumor. So, we would advise having a biopsy done so that, we can determine that. And so I'm thinking, uh-oh. So I just asked, I said, well, when they said, do you have any questions? I said, well, my first question is, what's the likelihood that this is something serious? I dared not say the C word, cancer. I couldn't even spit it out at that point. And so I said, just give it to me straight. Do you feel like this is something serious? And they said, well, when you look at the cyst, it's somewhat opaque. When you look at this abnormality, which looks to be a tumor, it looks to be solid. That's typically an indicator, but I don't want to say that at this point, but the likelihood is more likely than not. But let's do a biopsy, see what this is, and then we can talk about next steps. So the interesting thing, April, is that I remember, hearing something similar when I had the benign cyst and being just scared to death. I mean, that was the roughest weekend of my, one of the roughest weekends ever, because it was like on a Friday, right? But this time, for some reason, I was a lot more calm about it. And, I'm not sure why, but I was still thinking, wow, I hope this isn't cancer. I really hope that it's not.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, and she said, and I remembered this, and I thought about you when the doctor said it. And she said, let's not worry and stress over something that, we don't really have all the answers on at this point. Right. Don't let it ruin your day, whatnot. Let's just have the biopsy done, and then we'll go from there. So I said, oh, okay. But in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking,
sure.
It's like, oh man, I hope that's not what this is.
How long, Kim, was it after you had the mammogram and that they showed you the abnormality? How long after that before they did the biopsy?
I would say probably, so let's see, that was mid-January when I had the mammogram. So it was early, maybe a couple of weeks.
And do you recall what kind of biopsy? Was it a core needle biopsy that many refer
It was a
to?
needle biopsy. And you
Yeah.
know what? I remember why it took so long. Remember the ice storm we had, snow and
Yeah.
ice?
Uh-huh.
So that was the week that I was it so it originally was only going to be like a week and a half, like a week. And then so yeah, that was late January when I had the mammogram. Sorry about that. And I don't have my notes open because I have all my dates here. So it was late January. I was supposed to have gone for the biopsy the week that those ice storms came in, and they ended up having to push it out because everybody that was scheduled that week, it was kind of like one of those things where they had to push everybody out. So had a needle biopsy done. And I know that sounds scary. And I'm a needle phobe. I hate needles. But they give you lidocaine. You don't really feel it. And the folks at Baylor were wonderful. They walk you through everything, treat you with dignity and care and compassion. And, they made the room comfortable. They had, birds, you could hear birds chirping and spa music and just kind of relaxing. And they were very reassuring through the whole process. But yeah, that needle biopsy, I had to turn my head.
Yeah,
I couldn't.
absolutely. I'm with you, man. I mean, I'm fine with needles. I don't have a problem, but I don't watch that stuff at all. I'm just like, whatever's happening, I feel it. It's fine, but I don't want to look at that at all. So how
Yeah.
long was it after? So you had the mammogram. A couple weeks later, you have the biopsy, and then how long before you got the results from the biopsy?
Probably like 5 days.
That waiting, we were just talking with Paisley and Mandy about that. That waiting part is one of the absolute worst parts for sure. Tell us about, where you were and how that call came through.
Oh, I'll never forget it. I was here at home, and um, and my husband was here. David was here too, and doing some work. And they told me about, hey, we'll contact you. It'll probably be about 5 days. And so when I looked down at my phone as it was ringing to see who was calling. I went, okay, here's the call I've been waiting for. So I answered the phone, and the doctor confirmed it was me, you know, and said, hey, we have the results from your biopsy. And I went, okay. And she explained to me that it had come back as I'm trying to remember, invasive ductal carcinoma, which is breast cancer, which is cancer, malignancy. And she paused because I didn't say anything. At that point I was just stunned. And she asked me if I was okay. And I said, um, I'm not sure, but please continue. Um, so, she explained everything to me. And I don't really remember much after that because, and it's not the way she said anything, it wasn't any of that, but just to hear, you know, you have breast cancer. And I'm thinking, did I really just hear this? Is this really happening to me? Seriously? Like, did am I having a bad dream? Is this really real?
Right, and
Um,
you're just such shock. It's hard to absorb that and be
yeah.
conscious of anything that happens after hearing that, right?
Yeah. And, Dave was in the other room and, hear me talking to the doctor and, he was right there with me and I just fell apart.
Yeah.
I don't remember what we talked about. I remember, just, you know, being emotional about it and just thinking, I can't believe this is happening to me.
For those people watching right now, talking to Kim Lusk here, the Goddess of Thunder, bass player extraordinaire, recently diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. So honored that you are joining us tonight in this phase of your journey through this rare and aggressive disease. and sharing with us these details, Kim. Thank you so much for that. And just, you know, explaining this to people and helping people understand, I feel is so important. So you get that call, you get that diagnosis, and I'm sure immediately the first thing you're thinking, I remember for me, I was like, okay, I definitely want this cancer out of my body as soon as humanly possible, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like, you're like, that's what I want. So tell us what happened next.
So, I learned that um, the form of breast cancer I have is one of the most aggressive, which is triple negative, which is not reactive to, either proteins or hormones. There's so many forms of breast cancer. I've learned so much since being diagnosed. Um, so there was a nurse navigator, which has been very helpful. And basically a nurse that you can reach out to who can answer questions and guide you through all of the steps of the process that you're going to need to take. So I was told, you're going to need to talk to a breast surgeon, a specialist, and she's Dr. Canavan is amazing. And we would need to talk about treatment options. So there was an appointment that was scheduled with Dr. Lynn Canavan um, at Baylor, and went to the appointment. And there's a feeling, I was anxious and nervous, and just kind of all my emotions were balled up. But it was like, okay, we got to put our big girl britches on and just let's listen to what they have to say and go from there. David went with me. I've got such a great support in him, and just really appreciate that. But they basically told me, this is the form of breast cancer that you have. This is what we were able to learn from the biopsy, and these are the steps that you're going to need to. And they mapped it all out for me, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if I can show this to you.
Give it a whirl.
But it almost looks like an org chart, the way that it was mapped out, which was very easy to understand. I have a binder here. My binder's got all my information in it.
I called mine my breast binder.
I love it. But they basically, and here's my binder that I got. And you can see how thick it is. There's a lot of information in there, but I basically, put everything that they've given me in it. Here's the kind of the org chart looking thing that they gave me. And it basically mapped out, okay, and they said they caught it. They said, here's the thing. You're very fortunate that it was caught very, very early. We need to determine whether or not it has spread to your lymph nodes or not. So I had to have an MRI. So it was a breast MRI. And what's interesting about that, and I didn't know these existed, but it's this big MRI machine, and you basically lie down on your stomach, and they have these two openings for your breasts. So your breasts, it's like, and this is going to sound really weird, but it reminded me of being a kid before I had breasts, where I made, it's like, wow, I'm actually lying flat on this flat surface, because your breasts go into the cups, and then the MRI machine does its work. So basically what happened is they did a regular MRI, and then they did imaging again with what they call contrast. And so they give you an IV, and they put contrast dye into it, and that goes into your system, and then they get imaging from that. So that was really interesting. It took about maybe 15-20 minutes each time they did it. And so that was done. And so the doctor, takes that imaging. And basically what they told me was, we can do one of two things. We caught it so early, you're fortunate. And you can either do a mastectomy or you can do a lumpectomy. Either way, the treatment outcome is going to be the same, which they recommended radiation first, or a lumpectomy first, or the mastectomy. I opted for the lumpectomy based on what we talked about in terms of, the stage that I was at, which is stage 1. And the fact that whether I did a lumpectomy or mastectomy, the outcome would be the same. So I chose to preserve my breast. And they said, you will have radiation and then chemo for approximately 20 weeks, with the radiation targeting the area where the lumpectomy took place, where the actual tumor is taken out, to make sure the surrounding tissue, does not generate that cancer again. And then the chemotherapy would then take care of the rest of my body to ensure that, that form of cancer does not resurface anywhere else. So hearing the word chemotherapy pretty much set me off, and I got emotional about that, because it's like, okay, this is really real. This is the real deal here.
Right.
So yeah, that was really scary. Really, really scary.
When they told you that you were going to have radiation and chemo, are you doing radiation for X amount of time and then you're doing chemo? You're not
Yeah.
doing them together, right? So you're going to do
No.
radiation first and then chemotherapy. And so the
Hmm.
interesting part that I know people watching right now don't realize is you're like 8 days out from your lumpectomy. You just had the surgery. I mean, is that fresh for you, right? It was 8 days ago, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
It was last Wednesday. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
last Wednesday. So I just had that done. And let me just tell you, to me, that was the easy part. Um, the tumor's gone. Now comes the challenging part.
You're like, yeah, but you're like, come on, man. Cancer is out of your body. I mean, were you just not like, I mean, doesn't that feel good?
It did. It was
I
like,
know. It's gone.
it's gone. And you want to think, oh man, it's over. It's done. I'm cancer free. Well, it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. Well, if I want to stay that way, now
Right,
I've got to
we
go
got
through
some
the
other
hard stuff.
we got some other crap to do now, right? Yeah, but I mean just
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but just that thought and knowledge that the cancer is out of me. God, that just felt so good. Yes, there's a lot more work to be done and super, preventative stuff and just to really make sure that you throw everything but the kitchen sink at it. But
Yeah.
just having that moment where you're like the cancer is out of me. Okay, now let's move on to the next phase. So that was 8 days ago, and when is
Mhm.
this radiation planned to start for you?
So I am meeting with the radiation oncologist tomorrow morning, because they basically said, hey, we've done the lumpectomy. We've got, a 2-week window to move forward to the next step. So I'm meeting with the oncologist tomorrow morning to discuss that plan. The nice thing is I found out I'm a candidate for, and I have a choice between 2 different options for radiation. Wanted to tell you the result of my pathology, because they, when they removed the tumor, they also removed some tissue around it, and they removed 2 lymph nodes. So basically, they did a test where it's similar to what they did with the MRI, where they inject you with a contrast solution, but it's more, I want to say nuclear, but not, you don't glow in the dark or anything after it's done.
Good to know.
But it basically lights up, and it's like it's a needle, um, it's a needle procedure that they do prior to the lumpectomy to determine, hey, which lymph nodes are going to light up. Do we need to take 1? Do we need to take 2? We want to make sure that hasn't spread beyond a certain point. So the pathology report came back. The lymph nodes were clear. The tissue around the tumor were clear, which they said, that's really the best outcome that you want. That's what you really want. So there's been no spread. We caught it in time. Tissue's clear. Lymph nodes are clear, but we still need to go through the radiation process and the chemotherapy process.
Well, and just for those watching, just to clarify, with all of that behind you, you can now feel confident in the diagnosis of stage 1 triple negative breast cancer. So
Yes,
that's fantastic place to be for sure.
absolutely. So we're going to talk to the radiation oncologist tomorrow morning to determine the plan. There's a choice of 2 where it's twice a day for 2 to 5 days, or 5 days a week for 4 to 6 weeks. So I've got lots of questions for the oncologist tomorrow regarding, side effects and expectations. Really the radiation takes about, from what I've researched, about 15 minutes each time it's done. It's not supposed to be painful or anything like that, but there could be some after effects from it. And so, those are going to be some of the questions that I have. Whereas if we do this 2 to 5 day thing, what does that mean? What's the strength of the radiation? Is it the same, but over a longer period of time if I choose the other option? Things like that.
Yeah, and it's so good to have all those questions, and it's a good point to mention anybody who's watching either now or on the replay or on the YouTube channel once this is there, that it's so important to make sure you bring a list of questions for your doctor if you're recently diagnosed, and to get all those answers or from your doctor so that you can feel confident in your plan, and always make sure that you have a team that you have trust with and you feel confident in. That part is equally as important. So this is also fresh. Anybody who's just joining, again, this is Kim Lusk, the goddess of thunder, bass player extraordinaire out of Dallas, Texas, recently diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, and happy that you're willing to share your story. And especially, I think one of the most important things, I think, Kim, from your story is just the fact that you were so diligent and that you caught this so early, and that is a testament to where you are in this journey, and to what your outcome is going to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, I just want to say that, you know, April, you and I have known each other for 10 years. I really appreciate what it is that you do, um, for breast cancer research, and, having family members that have, been diagnosed with breast cancer. That's all, it's been something that's near and dear, and, helping out and whatnot. And so, really being here with you, and I really appreciate you, you know, inviting me to join in. Um, Really, it was important to me to share, because there, in my mind, this could be helping someone else who's going through the same thing. And yes, it's scary. Um, and yes, it's, there are going to be things about it that are not pleasant. And if me sharing, my journey and my experience with what I'm going through helps someone else, then, hey, um, that's really why I wanted to come on and share it. And I was actually hesitant about posting on. I think you and I talked about this on Facebook, but I decided to do that for the same reason. Um, and I really felt relieved after I shared that. You know, so, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Girl, yeah, I mean, and that was one of the things you expressed to me early on, was that you wanted to be an advocate, and you wanted people to know how early detection is saving your life, and what a difference that has made, and just to inspire and provide hope as well. I know that you're reaching people, Kim, and it may sound silly, but somebody might hear this today, and you could be saving lives just by sharing your story, because you're activating those people to get up and go and get those mammograms, and be sure and stay diligent, so that if they do encounter breast cancer at any point, it can be at the earliest stage possible, and it can be something that they can easily beat, just like you are right now. So freaking cool.
Absolutely.
So after radiation, you're going to be doing chemo. Did they
Mhm.
indicate what kind of chemo or anything like that?
They did. And I know that the chemo is going to be the second most aggressive form. It's actually going to be two forms of chemo. So there'll be one that I will have for 8 weeks. And then I'll take 2 rounds of that. And then after, there will be a second form of chemo that I'll be taking.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, we'll be here for you every step of the way. You know that, and like if you need anything at all, and we have that group, Survivors Rock, a breast cancer consignment community. That
Hmm.
if you feel up for joining that, there's tons of people in there that have had radiation. I haven't had radiation, so if you come knocking on my door, I'm gonna be like, dude, I don't know. So, but there are a lot of people in there who've had radiation. I know Paisley, who was just on the broadcast, had radiation and several others. So there's lots of people in there that can tell you what their experience was, or you guys can, chat about that in there in that community here on Facebook, Survivors Rock of Breast Cancer Could Stick It community. So how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. You know, feeling relieved that the cancer is out of my body, right? And I've been going for walks, and I'm still healing. They did internal stitching and then Durabond, the kind of that they call it super glue for your skin, is what they did the sutures. So I have one under where they did an incision, on the side here, and then the other is around the areola, because it was, it would cause less scarring, it wouldn't be noticeable, things like that. So, still healing up from that. And they give you this great bra in the hospital to wear to provide support. And, they give you some meds to take when you first get home, lasts about 4 days. And then, you take Tylenol. And so, really I've been trying to stay active and really just, keep the blood flowing, making sure I don't get lymphedema by, working my arm. Because after they remove lymph nodes, you could, you know, um, basically the pathways and the lymph nodes that they remove, there are lymph nodes that where the fluid, because that's part of your lymphatic system, and helps you with your immune system. So once you remove those, you could develop lymphedema, due to not the different factors that could impact drainage from your lymphatic system. So you have to stay active and do a lot of deep breathing, which really has been therapeutic for me, honestly, to prevent that from happening. And they can test you to see what your likelihood of that is, if you're someone that's, on a similar journey with regard to breast cancer. So that's been really important, and really just being cognizant of taking care of your body and how things are going to change, and how your routine may change too. Being active is certainly important.
Yeah, it totally is, and I know that that's gonna be something that Dr. Joyce O'Shaughnessy is gonna be talking about here coming up next. She'll be here about 9:30 Central Time and be available to answer any questions that you or anyone else, watching might have. Kim, we don't have a lot of time left, and I gotta make sure there's a lot of people giving shout outs to you, so I gotta make sure you hear this, all right? We got
Okay.
Mary Riley Samuels, I think I know her, she says, "Go Kim!" Paisley, who was just on the broadcast, she says, "Hi, Kim," and she sends you some hearts. Kim Beavers says, "Hi, Kim," and she's sending you X's and O's. Uh, Big Bad Bill Martin out of Florida says, "You rock, Kim." Paisley says, "Amazing, you ladies rock." Uh, Earlier, when you talked about Van Hagar, Bill Martin put in 5150. So you got to love
Oh
that.
yeah.
Kim Beavers says, "Keeping you in my thoughts and prayers daily, Kim." So cool.
Thank you.
She also says, "Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing and giving hope to so many people."
Thank y'all. Thank you so much for sharing those. I really appreciate it. And you know what? We're gonna stick it to breast cancer.
Yeah, dude. I can't let you miss this though. Michelle Graves says, "What's up? I love you, Kim."
Oh,
And
you,
Miles is
Michelle.
Miles Foreman is here as well, showing you love. So there's a lot of love out there for you. Oh, Michelle has a question. So I told folks that they could ask questions. So we have a question from Michelle. How do you keep a
Okay.
positive how do you keep a positive outlook when you receive the news like that?
You know, one of the things that I said to myself is, my grandmother experienced this. She was a tough cookie. She lived to be 100. I can do the same. She's my inspiration. And I received some support from folks at Baylor, some resources. And I have a really good support system at home. My mom's been here with me, and David, my husband, and my sister, my family, has been wonderful. I am journaling, and I am really to be honest with you, thankful that I did not put off that appointment, that I actually did what I needed to do, because, you know, I'm a firm believer that saved my life. Because had I put that off for 6 months or a year and just said, I'll do it next year, this would be a different conversation.
It absolutely would be, with the aggressive and rare triple negative breast cancer that you got the diagnosis of. I mean, it's so important
Mhm.
that you caught that early. Cynthia says, "Thank you. This has been very informative. Prayers and well wishes for a successful treatment and journey, Kim Lusk."
Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
getting a lot of love out there. All right, I see Dr. O is waiting in the wings here for her spot that starts in about 3 minutes. So I'm going to do a quick switch over here, Kim. I am so grateful that you joined tonight, and you look fabulous as usual. And I just know that you're gonna bust through this with flying colors, and just know that I'm personally here for you as your friend. You're so dear to me, and I'm I'm so proud of you, man. You're just an inspiration of hope to many, and to me too. Thank you so much for being on here, girl.
You're an inspiration as well, April. Thank you for having me.
But have a great night. Okay, I love you.
All right. Love you too.
See ya.
Bye
All right,
bye.
everybody. That was Kim Lusk, the goddess of thunder. Yes, from many bands. Be sure to check her out on the Dallas music scene. She's with Holy Diver, Red Rockers, Battle Axe. Be sure and check her out.